C++ objects are based on C structures. In fact, you can create objects using either the struct or object keyword. Let's open up working.cpp out of the Chapter 8 folder in your exercise files and double-click on it to open it in the editor. I'm just going to go ahead and declare a C-type struct using the struct keyword. Call it struct A, and we'll just give it a few members here. And then I'm going to come down here in the main function, and I'm going to create an object based on that structure. If I just say A equals, and initialize it, here I'm going to use printf. And we'll see that when I save this and press the button there to compile and run it, you see that that works just fine. So I'm able to create this structure. I'm able to create an instance of that structure or a variable of that type, and I'm able to access the data members of that structure simply with the structure member operator. A couple other things to notice here. You'll notice that I didn't have to type struct A like this. In C, you have to type struct A as the type. In C++, you can just use the name there, and you don't need the keyword struct or the keyword object. The distinction between structures and classes, there's really only one distinction. If I change this to class and save it and run it, the only reason this doesn't work is because these data members are private. See, it says IB is private, IC is private, could not convert. And within this context, that means that these private data members, I'm trying to access them in that context. And if we look at the actual error message out of the compiler, we see IA is private, and then within this context for line 13 and character position 45, character position 51 and 57, and those are these separate usages. So that's the only difference. In fact, if I were to just type public here like this, and this declares that these data members will be public, this now will work exactly like the struct. And if I can compile and run that, everything works exactly as we expected. Really, the only distinction between class and struct is that data members in a class default to private, and data members in a struct default to public. I'm going to go ahead and make these public again. We can actually declare any type in here. This middle one could be a string, call it SB. And then now printing it out needs to be a type S, and we need to actually use the CString method of that string. This is actually a SB now, and CString method, and that'll allow us to print that out. I'm just going to put all these on the next line so that we can see them. CString is a method of the string class, and it gives us back a CString that's usable with printf. And now when I initialize it, let's just give it a string that says 2. And if I save this and run it, you'll see that it works exactly as we expected. But typically, most data members are kept as private in a class. If you want public data members, you probably want a struct. If you want a class, you probably want private data members, and you want to use accessors. Accessors are public function methods that are used to access private data members. And for an example, we can just bring up this accessors.cpp. I'm just going to double click on it here. We're not going to actually compile and run this because we're going to cover function members in our next movie. But I just want you to see that this is typically how this is done. Here's exactly the same class that we have in the movie that we're looking at right now. And you see we have an integer, a string, and an integer. And then we have these public methods for dealing with it. We have a constructor, we have setters, set A, set B, set C, and we have getters, get A, get B is a C string, and get C. And so we're actually able to do the same thing here and use it in the same way, but we're using function members to access these data members, and that's typically how it's done in a class. So if you actually want publicly accessible data members, then you probably want a struct. If you want to use the encapsulation of object-oriented programming, then you want to use a class, you want to have private data members, and you want to use function methods as accessors to access those private data members. And again, we'll learn more about member functions in the next movie. So I'm going to close this, and we'll bring this back down to size. C++ classes are based upon C structures. In fact, C++ structures and classes are identical, except that structure members default to public access while class members default to private access. It's good practice to use struct when the structure will have only data members, and it's good practice to use class when there are also function members. So let's now delete our working file and run clean to get set up for the next lesson.